Welcome, welcome everyone. I am Carmel Ecker, single parent empowerment coach with Speak Now Life Coaching, and I am here today with Regina, and she is the internal peace revolutionist, which I love that title.
Thank you.
There's so much in there, and it's intriguing. It's an intriguing title.
Hmm.
So I'm actually going to let you, as I always do, introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about what you do and why you're here. Why are we talking today?
Cool. Thanks so much, Carmel. So I call myself a recovering perfectionist because that has been my biggest and probably most productive thing that I've left in the closet and not even in the closet, on the contrary, like acknowledged it, looked at it up and down and said, you know what, this isn't working for me. It doesn't serve me, and put it away and just said, let's start with a new canvas. And so my intention and my goal in how I serve others now is really supporting them to live their best life and declutter what's not working and really just show up with full integrity, full authenticity as much as possible. And sometimes that's even, pardon my French, snotty tears and, like a total mess, right? Life is messy, period.
Oh my
Dot,
goodness.
dot,
Yes.
dot.
Yes. Life
And
is messy.
yeah, and so I think, one of the things that I've learned, especially with parents, is that there's no cookie cutter way. I mean, there's books, and that's all hypothetical, right? And yes, there's speeches and there's courses and programs and blah 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 blah. But reality is reality, and it doesn't always work that way. So instead of creating a false narrative that everything is perfect all the time, let's be real and let's say the truth, which is it's not. And that doesn't mean that we have to constantly feel like we want to live under a rock or underneath the covers. The reality is some days we do want to live that way, but especially as single parents, I'm sure you would tell me you can't do that. That's not an option.
It is definitely not an option. I may have some moments in the day where I can do that, but when my son is home, like yeah, there's no curling up in a ball, in my bedroom and just like shutting the world out because that little human needs me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is such a blessing because, um, and I had no intention of going here, but why not, right? So speaking of raw and authentic, so I don't have children. So for those listening, just know that I feel great respect and great admiration for parents because that is a full-time gig. And whether kids are in school or they're not, like they could call you any minute and be like, all right, I need you, you're on duty. Right. So it's not like you just put the hat in the closet and that's it and you're off duty. It's a constant thing. And I do know that I have definitely people in my life that I feel like I parent. And it wasn't that wasn't like the book. It didn't say that in the book that I read growing up. It wasn't like, well, when you get to be in your 20s, you're going to start feeling like a parent. And not but your own kids, but I think we all parent in a way, right? We parent each other, and I think that's part of what community is all about, is holding space for each other and loving each other in our frailties and our vulnerabilities, and still saying like, hey, you can do this, hey, you can. Parenting, to me, when I think of a parent, I think of somebody that not necessarily gave birth to someone, but is in that leadership role of guidance, and it's like a guardian. It's a
Mm.
guardian. So I think of, who are we guardians to? We're guardians to our pets, we're guardians to our friends, sometimes to our clients, right? And our job is not to do it for them, it's to show them that they can do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. And I think too, you didn't bring this up, but I think that in some cases we can parent ourselves.
Absolutely.
That self leadership and being kind and supportive to ourselves instead of letting those negative voices in our head take over and tell us that we're not good enough and we'll never succeed, and all those negative things that we can say to ourselves that we would never say to somebody else in our lives, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And the truth is like, what, so what if we say it, right? Like there's a stigma that like we can't say certain things or we shouldn't. And the reality is yes, like if you're in a business meeting with, 50 people in suit and ties, you're probably not going to be like, hold on, I need to, whatever the thing is that's coming out of my mind. But I think I think that to me is what is the real gift of transparency and understanding who we are at our core. Like, I respect people that admit that things are not perfect and life is messy and they figure it out anyway. Like, I remember, perfect example, I remember one of my in a way, I would definitely say she's a mentor. She's a speaker that I know, and she's become a friend. And she was speaking and she was talking about how she was on stage and she got a phone call and she didn't, like, they took her, or no, she was supposed to speak that day, and she got a phone call from her son, who was all the way across the world, like I think he was in Thailand, and he had an accident. And she didn't know what she should do. She didn't know if she should, like, drop everything and go fly there, or if she should keep, her schedule and speak that day. And turns out he was okay, but she ended up speaking. And so that's life. Like, some days the show still goes on, and some days I believe we get to practice that bold bravery, like Brene Brown. She talks about that, like speaking to that sense of just lean into messy parenting and doing your best and creating a community of like-minded people that support you and understand what you're going through. And, maybe, like for parents that are homeschooling, right? Like, I can't imagine being a full-time employee and then having to homeschool as well. So if you do these pods where, you're taking turns and each parent gets a day, like, it's so beautiful, it's so loving, and there's so much greatness that can come out of difficult situations.
Mm, so true. And I love that you bring up that idea of community and fostering community and surrounding yourself with like-minded people who can support you and that you can support. I think we all need that, you know. There's this saying out there like nobody makes it alone, and I really think that's true. And yet in our society there tends to be this belief that we're somehow supposed to. There's an expectation, and it's a false expectation, that we're supposed to be able to take care of our families all on our own, and it just doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's so much, so much, I believe, that's a false narrative as far as the things we're conditioned to think that are normal. Like, I think you and I even talked about this on our last call, was like, what is the typical family is like, 2.5 kids, right? And like the white picket fence and the this and the that. And we have all these ideas about what that's supposed to be. But yet, a lot of people get that. And then they're like, well, now what? Like, this isn't
Yeah,
exactly what I
I
wanted it to be or thought it would be, or, and then you look at, the other neighbors, and you're looking, and then there's this whole comparisitis thing that is part of, the cousin, right, of perfectionism. Comparisitis and perfection, they hang out together on the corner. And it's like neither one of them are really looking out for our best interest. And actually, I think they're both bullies, and they have really very small egos, they're very insecure qualities. And so that's why they show up the way they do. And so I think if we can was that word personify?
yeah.
If we can personify even those emotions, those negative emotions like guilt, right? Parents, I know, I hear about all the time, they feel guilty, like even right now, I'm here with you and I'm hearing my dog scratching the door. He's been fine for hours. Now he's scratching the door because he's hearing me talk about parenting. Like, what are the odds, And so there's a little part of me that's like, should I go open the door? Should I pause and tell Carmel, like, hold on? Or should I just keep going and I'll get to him in a little bit, And it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be 1000%. And that is what it is. And that's where, for me, the work I get to do is I get to teach people that they can still have that peace, even when it's not perfect, even when you feel guilty that you can't be in 5 places at once, because it's just what it is. That's just how life is designed. And we can still feel peace even through that and in that.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about personifying negative emotions like guilt, maybe even stress. Well, I don't think stress is actually technically an emotion, but you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
what does that look like? Personifying some of those negative emotions.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me back to that because I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Yes, so personifying, like when I think of, okay, let's say negativity or maybe insecurity, that's probably a better one. Like if I if I think about, there's a fabulous book that I read probably maybe 15 years ago, called Dark Side of the Light Chasers,
Ooh,
and it was written by Debbie Ford,
okay.
and she was, well-known author, Hay House, um, very did a lot with seminars and turns out with addiction actually. And so in this book, she actually taught, it was so remarkable. I mean, it's been years and it's probably been 25 years even, and I still remember this book and the exercise. So she says, imagine, it's a meditation. Imagine in your mind, you're on a bus and you're hanging out, not hanging out, but you're on this bus, and on the bus is all these different characters, and the characters are your emotions. So you have anger, dressed in like a leather jacket and like smoking a cigarette in the bus, like just doesn't give a crap about anybody and just pissed off. And then sadness is like, I think of Eeyore, or like a character from like a movie, right? Like a cartoon character that you can associate with. And he's just like sad and grumpy and just, and then Grumpy, right? Grumpy's a separate character. So you have all these different characters and you actually engage with them. And so it becomes a lot less emotional because you're separate. Like you're physically separating yourself from the emotion. So now you're anchoring the emotion onto something that's fictitious. So nobody's getting hurt in this exercise, right? It's just an imagination working. So you're giving up the attachment to the emotion, and then you actually have a dialogue with that emotion. So for example, it's fear, right? Like if fear, for me in this moment, fear shows up as just like a big ball of, you know, just everything not good, right? Like all the yucky stuff. So what would the conversation be with fear? Fear probably feels like there's no purpose for it. It doesn't really know where it belongs. It feels lost and confused. It feels frustrated. It feels lonely. And then when I start to like pick that apart, it's no longer fear. It's kind of sadness and like, oh, I feel bad for it.
Hmm.
So it's like, if we can, like you said, if we can do the same parenting that we do for our kids or our, loved ones or whoever it is that we're caretaking for, if we can be guardians to them, we can surely be guardians to ourselves. It just means sometimes we have to create that space for that. And those little exercises, although they're silly, they're really powerful, and they really are designed to help us in a psychology format to disassociate from the emotion on I think I would say, even I would be so bold to say even on a tangible level,
Okay.
because I think as I'm speaking about it, I personally can see and like, I mean, yes, I can't touch fear, but I can relate to it.
It's tangible in the sense that you've experienced fear,
Mhm.
right? Like it's something that you have felt in your body, and so it can become tangible in that sense, right?
Yes.
You can relate to the emotion in that way. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, probably a better word is relatable.
Okay.
Like that, I think that's the word I'm looking for. Like exactly what you just said. It's having that relationship with the word. So
Mhm.
if a parent is feeling frustrated, for example, like what, and this takes some awareness, right? Which is why it's perfect that they get to work with a coach like you, because you remind them, well, where are you experiencing frustration? What does that look like? What's that feel like in your day? Well, I get frustrated when the school calls me and I'm in the middle of work and I can't leave, but my kid has a bloody nose.
Yeah.
Okay, so what options do we have? And we make a list. What are the 10 things you can do? Call a neighbor, call a friend. Um, you know, Child can go to the nurse, right? There's a ton of options. And sometimes in those moments of the real life, aka breakdowns, it's easy to fall apart, but it's all about practice. And I think that's the biggest thing that when we all take a moment to acknowledge that we're human, we're doing the best we can, and just be gentle on ourselves. Like you said, like we don't have to be superwoman and superman all the time. And and truthfully, to me, superman and superwoman are those that are real, who say, today's been a tough day, and can accept that with grace.
Right, as opposed to powering through and putting on a brave front, an armored front, that just doesn't let anybody in.
Yeah,
Right, you become
absolutely.
like this untouchable human that other people can't really relate to because you're putting on that brave face, and people are like, oh my god, look at Regina, like she just seems like she has it all together, and I feel like a complete failure next to her. Right, whereas if we let people see the imperfect parts of our lives, then they're better able to connect with us and us with them.
Totally.
Which brings
Yeah.
me back to the community thing that we were talking about earlier.
And it's, even without going too deep into the weeds, I think, especially now, with life the way it is, it's rather complicated. You have a lot of different conversations going on, and what's right, what's wrong, right, quote unquote. And I personally believe everyone, from a, like, looking at it from a macro to a, or the other way around, micro to a macro level, right? If everyone follows their own truth and does it with integrity, does it with clarity and with kindness and compassion, then I don't see where, as a whole unit, where that wouldn't work. Like I'm a big proponent of community. I'm a big proponent of, like, collaborating and doing things together as a community. And the best way to do that, I believe, is to give people an opportunity to speak up and to have a voice, and do it with kindness, do it with love, and give people space to be individuals, while having a clear goal for the community and for the big vision, right? So, like, if our world, as a kid, I remember my goal was always world peace, which is really odd, because I remembered it a couple of, like, weeks ago. I was thinking about this, and I was like, wow, like, look what I do for a living. I teach peace, and it's
Peace
not always,
revolutionist.
yeah, like, it's kind of funny, and there was times in my life when I was like, world peace, yeah, right, that's never going to happen. And I look back at those times, and I was like, well, that's because I was not at peace. I didn't feel good about myself. I was insecure about things. I was most likely hiding myself and what was really going on, because of fear of what people would think. And I've learned, who cares what people think? Like, some people are going to gel with me and some people aren't, and it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
there's plenty of mentors, plenty of teachers that I totally get what they're saying, and I jive with them really well. And then there's others that have a huge following that I just don't, it just doesn't resonate. It's like food. Like, some people really like textured food, some people don't. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a preference.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think when we can take away all of the labels of, wrong or right, I think that in itself really creates a sense of peace, especially for parents, because it's not easy being a parent.
It's not easy being a parent, and yeah, it is messy, and life, like you said at the beginning, in life in general is messy, right? And the more that we can embrace that, the easier things get,
Yeah.
really. Yeah. So now you actually have, I mean, one of the things you do in your business is help people to cultivate internal peace and combat the stress that we all can feel that can build up, and certainly single parents end up with, potentially more stress than some other some other people in life. And you have an acronym that helps people embrace stress and actually learn how to make stress work for them in their life. And I'm super curious about this because, it seems counterintuitive. What do you mean make stress work for me? Isn't it
Mm.
something that I should be trying to have less of and avoid? So explain a little bit about that, and then maybe we can talk about the acronym that you've created.
Yeah. And I love that you asked. Thank you so much. So the acronym was my way of like kind of referencing fear, how we talked about it a little while ago. It was my way of like humanizing it and saying, okay, so if there's this big thing and it's like this big ball of, stress that causes, more divorce in the world than ever, causes more job loss, causes illness, right? Stress is like this huge thing. Everybody says, I need to stress less. I stress too much. But yet we all dive into stress like, like it's a, like a swimming pool.
Yeah, we choose things that create more stress instead of choosing things that create less stress.
Right. Exactly. And so I thought, okay, so let's put this, let's flip the paradigm. Let's put it on its head and figure out, how do I make this work? Like, it's not going away, right? Stress is not, in any fashion leaving this world anytime soon, or my life. So let me embrace this. So I thought, okay, STRESS. I thought, okay, so first, if I see myself and I see my future, like, in other words, if I want something, how can I focus on the vision in front of me? So the first S stands for see yourself in the future. So really seeing yourself the way you want to be. So it takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of effort, and almost in a good way, manipulating oneself to imagine themselves in the future. So that's the first step, is declaring.
Yeah. Is that imagining the future that you want for yourself?
Yeah, I think it's more, who do you want to be? Because in order to have certain things, right? Like, I believe in order to have that beautiful life that we want, because we all have our future life, right? But who do we have to be in order to have that future life? I can have this amazing vision of having this beautiful, let's say beautiful house and beautiful car and, beautiful husband and beautiful family and life and traveling and clients and all this stuff. But I'm not going to be able to attain that doing the same things I'm doing today.
Right.
Because I literally have to be, yes, I can have the same skin, same body, same mind, same face, all of that. And something has to change. So probably my thoughts have to change. Probably my perception on certain things has to change, like maybe even my belief systems. And, for those that are freaking out, even just hearing this, being like, I don't want to change, right? Like, that's the choice, right? You can choose to stay where you're at and keep creating more of the same.
Yeah.
Or you can give up the control of, I don't want things to change, because that's all that is. It's just ego, like, like on the chalkboard, right? Like, I'm not going to change. That's all that is. It's fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And anybody, I believe, who has a vision of anything different than what their current state of awareness and current reality is, there is something out there that's different for a reason. Like, if you're imagining, or fantasizing is probably a better word. If you're fantasizing about something else, it's because there's a part of you, maybe this big, it could be tiny, 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 but there's a little part of you that feels like there's more available, because there is. And it's like, not to get too far off track, but like, it's like walking into like an ice cream shop, and you really like vanilla because you've had vanilla your entire life. But then you walk into this ice cream shop and you're like, oh my God, there's 31 flavors. All this time, I only knew there was vanilla. And so it's a lame example, but maybe it kind of fits,
It's concrete.
It's concrete. Yeah. So, seeing yourself in the future and saying, you know what, maybe there is a possibility of having living in a different place, or having a different career, or, what kind of a parent can I be if I'm feeling less stress, right? Bringing it back to what's really important. Like, if you're a stressed out parent, guaranteed your kids feel it. For sure. So absolutely. If you can't do it for yourself, do it for them, right? And so the first S is seeing yourself in the future. And thank you so much for asking, for clarity on that, because I want to make sure that it's clear for people. And then the T is training your brain. So this goes back to the belief systems, and really identifying what are the belief systems that are working for you and what are not. So if you know, if a parent is saying, well, I really want to spend more time with my kids, but then they're working until 11 p.m. and obviously not making time to be with their kids, then that's not really a priority. Let's just call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's fine, right? Because in certain times of life, maybe the priority is I need to make money so that I can put a roof over my kid's head. But I know plenty of parents that have beautiful roofs over their head that I personally think are way too expensive, right? That they're like, well, we need a roof over our head. Well, nobody said you had to live in $1 million house. I think your kid would be just as happy with you living in a $500,000 house. But you know what? You like working till 2 a.m, have at it. Just know that your kid's going to suffer because of it.
Right.
So I think it's really understanding like the priorities. And sometimes we teach ourselves that this is really important. Well, it might be, or it might not be.
Yeah.
Right.
And what you're really pointing to is the when people get caught in that cycle of, well, but I don't have a choice. Like I have to do this. I don't have a choice. And when you approach life from a more creative perspective of identifying what your priorities are and then deciding how you're going to work around those priorities versus the priorities that are handed to you from external sources, right? And
Totally.
this comes back to the comparativitis,
Comparisitis.
comparing to what other people have and setting that as the standard for your life, right? Bring it down to what do you actually want?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are
Totally.
your beliefs? Train your brain to focus more on what are you wanting? What are your beliefs about what makes a good life versus, living in comparison against what other people are doing. Yeah.
Totally. And I did that. I mean, I still get caught in that every once in a while. I'll look around and I'll be like, ooh, hold on, and I'll catch myself. And it doesn't mean we can't have more or want to have more. Let me put it that way. I don't believe it's not that we should want less. I think it's just like you said, the word is prioritize. Like, is that fancy house? You ask and your kids will tell you. You just ask them, what is it that you want? And they'll say, I want to play. I want us to go to the park, or I want to go to that thing next Saturday. And that's them communicating what they want, meaning, and I love this book because this book changed everything for me about relationships, and it definitely can be impactful for parents. It's called The 5 Love Languages.
Oh, yes.
It's
awesome.
Incredible. And 99% of kids that I'm not obviously a parenting expert. I haven't studied from that perspective, but 99% of the kids that I talk to, when I do this kind of like little investigative exercise with them, and I'll ask them like, so what is it that you love doing, or what do you enjoy doing with your parents, right? Or like, if you could get anything from your parents, what would you want? They often, most times, will say something that involves time. Like, I want to go to the park, or I want to go to this event, or I want to do something. And that's them saying, without their kids, so they might not be able to articulate, but they're saying, I want to spend quality time with my parent.
Yeah.
And parents are just busy trying to make money because they need to put food on the table. So
yeah, or put their kids in soccer, or they want to give their kids all the opportunities, right? And they're prioritizing that, whereas their kid might just say, well, I just want to spend time with you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's like so counterintuitive. It's like, for example, like, mom or dad is like stressing out to take them to soccer practice, but they don't really care about soccer practice. They just want to spend time on the drive to go with mom or dad. And so it's like, how much of this can just be resolved with communication and just talking, asking the questions, and that's the next letter, which is R, which is reframing. Like really understanding what is happening here and what do we need to do. So this is where it really helps to have a coach or a teacher, a mentor, to help reframe what's going on. Because a lot of times, and I hear it often, my students or my clients will say, something happened and their kids, something happened with grades. And most of the time it's because there's something going on at home that is just bubbling up and they don't know how to talk about it. And so it shows up in school, and then it comes back to the parent. And the parent's like, well, why didn't you do better in school? Well, it's like, sometimes it's about just creating that space. And I have a dear friend who, I love how she says this. She says, praise in public and critique in private.
Mm.
It's so
Well,
powerful.
and I would add to that also, be curious, right?
Yes.
As opposed to necessarily being critical,
Mm.
um, like think critically and
Hmm.
ask questions. Because a lot of times kids, and I've experienced this with my own son, something's going on and his behaviors are unusual, right? Or there can even sometimes be a pattern. And instead of thinking, oh, I guess this is a behavioral issue with my kid that I have to deal with, ask some questions and find out what's really going on there.
Mm.
Because often what I find is that they've interpreted something in a certain way, because there's the things that happen, and then there's the stories that we make up about those things that happen, right? And
So
so they
true.
end up telling themselves a story, and then they start downward spiraling in this negative thought pattern, right? And then the behaviors follow from that.
Hmm.
So I think just being curious with our kids and not coming at it from a critical standpoint is just so incredibly helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's powerful because it's empowering, right? And
Mm.
it really strengthens a person, which is the next letter, and that's actually E. So that stands for excellence. And so really, I love this. It's like beautifully, organically transitioning, right?
I know.
Is teaching ourselves as much as each other, how can we stand for excellence? How can we be better versions of ourselves? And I would definitely couple that with empowerment. And how can we empower ourselves not to be overwhelmed by stress, not to be um, ridiculed, or even, what's the word I'm looking for? Like thinking of stress as a bully and just being like, you know what? Good. Like, you're going to stand over there. I got this. I don't need you right now. And knowing sometimes stress is helpful. Like, how many times you have a deadline and you're like, I have to like tunnel vision here because I have to finish this. And so stress can actually be very helpful for us in the right circumstances. God forbid if there's someone, at gunpoint, that's the fight or flight, right? Is knowing the discerning of when it's helpful and when it's not. I think that's really, really key. And so we have STRE and then S. So the next one, I love this one. This is probably my favorite. And this is, we've touched on this a little bit, and that's surrounding ourselves with positive and energetic people, or like-minded people. So really, cocooning ourselves in a healthy environment and supportive system that allows for these types of conversations and these types of awarenesses that, to me, are priceless. Right. I know the work you're doing and the work I'm doing. I mean, we geek out on this stuff because this is like, for us, this is the work, right?
Yeah.
Is like, I can't imagine. And I remember when I didn't have these tools.
Mm.
I remember how just dissatisfied I was with life, and how unfulfilling life was, and how frustrating that was then, because I didn't know that there was these other, literally like a toolbox. If you have a toolbox and you're working on, a door, or you're putting even a picture frame up, right? It helps to have a nail,
Yes.
right? So it's
And a
like,
hammer.
and a hammer. Yeah. So it's like, you could try it with a box, but it's not going to work so well, you know? So I think it's just that simple. And like, sometimes I think we overcomplicate because we're adults. We think, well, we should know better. I should know how to figure this out. I should not need a nail. I should
Yes.
not need a hammer. I'm an
Yes.
adult. It's like, no, silly. Like, a picture frame requires a nail and a hammer. End of story. Like, keep it simple, and so as parents, I think a lot of times, or as adults, we think, well, I shouldn't need support, and I should have this covered. And to me, it's like, that's like the biggest, just, that is disempowering. Like, and not to get like, um what is the word I'm looking for? Not to get religious, but like, I believe in spirit, I believe in God, I believe in universe, whatever you want to call it, goddess, sometimes I'll call her. And I think that I don't believe that we were brought into this earth, into this world, to be alone. I believe that we were brought here to work together because it's actually quite easy being alone. Like you start to get into a rhythm, you start to kind of like, ask any single person who's been single for a long time, right? You kind of get to a point where you're like, this is working. Like I'm good, like nobody to like bother me about my stinky socks or, what am I eating for dinner? Like I do my own thing,
Yeah.
and there's something to that. But at the same time, that's why we want partners. That's why we want to have communities and friends. And yes, some people are designed, I guess, to be alone. They're, kind of more introverts and they don't necessarily want people around. But I do believe that as humans, we need each other.
Yeah, I think it's not so much the like the having people or not having people as it is the number of people in our lives. Like for some of us, we really
Mm-hmm.
like to have a lot of people around us. You know,
Mm-hmm.
those of us who are extroverts, we just love to be out and in community, and that's where we get our energy from. And for other people, they get energy from small groups and being alone. And so, it's that we all need the support of a community. It's just a matter of like how many people do we really need in that community, right? And it just kind of depends on what feeds you. I
Yeah,
think that's
so
that's
true.
my belief based on zero scientific evidence, but my own experience.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
now they talk about, which I can totally relate to, ambivert. I think is what
Mm.
it's called. It's like the person that is both, right? You're an extrovert, but then you're very much an introvert. Like as I'm getting older, I find myself in that role.
You know what? I love that you said that because I find the same thing. The older I
Hmm.
get, the more I need, like I've traditionally been a very extroverted person, but the older that I've gotten, I have found it that I need more time to myself and I enjoy that time much more.
Hmm.
I need that recharge time. So it's having that balance between the two. And of course, with COVID, it's been a challenge to get the to satisfy the extroverted part of myself.
Right. Which
Yeah.
is where this is so cool, these conversations and these
So true.
opportunities. Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten to the second S, now the third S.
So the third and final S, and this one goes back to kind of full circle because this is, we talked about starting, excuse me, I kind of gave it away, but it's okay. Not really, I know it, but obviously I hinted it. So seeing yourself in the future was the first one. Training your brain was the next one. Reframing your beliefs to work for you. And then excellence and empowerment, right? They are together. And then surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And then the last S is start where you are.
Mm. Oh my
Like,
God. Okay. For me,
right?
that's a really powerful, but I want you to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, just it goes back to so much of what we shared today with each other and discussing it is like so many people, and I've done this. I mean, I'm first one to stand in line and admit like there has been so many years in my life, not just times, but years in my life where I was comparing myself to other people. And I was like, well, it's easy for them. Look at them. How come they can do it and I can? Or look what they have and I don't. And it was like, how much, how much energy did I lose doing that? How much did that give away of my own power by looking at other people? And truthfully, I don't know what their dirty drawers look like. Like everyone has stuff, everyone has things in their life that are not working for them that they would totally give up if they had an opportunity. And there's a saying, if you went on the beach and you put everybody's problems in a bag individually on the beach, everyone would always mostly would pick up their own bag of problems because they know their problems intimately and they're familiar.
Oh, that's interesting.
So your neighbor, whoever's listening, your neighbor might have a really nice car, a really nice house, or really perfect kids, and you have no idea what they're dealing with. You have no idea what their bank account looks like. You have no idea what keeps them up at night. You have no idea, maybe even just the simple things like, do they have food in their fridge?
Mhm.
I know so many, credit card millionaires that you'd see them on the street and you'd think that they're uber wealthy and then they don't have food for their kids
Right, because
and
they
their kids are
maxed out their credit card.
dissatisfied. and their behavior issues, and vice versa, right? There's plenty of people that I know that don't have much, that, are not doing well, or they are doing well. So I've learned it's none of my business what is going on in other people's worlds. Unless it's solicited and they're asking for my help,
Mhm.
I have no right to stick my nose over the fence, and try to figure out. And I'm not going to say that I don't ever do it, because sometimes I still energetically, I'm like, I wonder what they have going on over there, but that's a different podcast. That's like,
Yeah.
gossip something, that's adulting.
Yeah. Well, and there can also be an element of aspiration to that too, right?
Yeah.
Where, you see what somebody else has on the outside and you're like, oh, you know what, I'd kind of like. So there can be a little bit of a positive spin on that. And we also need to recognize that we don't know what the story is behind everything that we're seeing,
Yes.
and to not compare. You know what, a great way to say it is, don't compare your middle to someone else's end, or don't compare your
Mm-hmm.
beginning to someone else's middle, right? Like, we're all, and this comes back to, like, start where you are. Don't
Mm-hmm.
worry about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Choose what you want to do. What do you want your life to look like? And start from there. And don't worry about, oh, it's too late and I should have started this 20 years ago, or, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Just stop. Start where
Yeah.
you are. This is
Yeah.
where you are. There's no changing that, where you are in this present moment. So, like, just start from there and move forward.
Totally. And I'm so grateful to you for saying that, because in no way do I want to minimize um, goals or the opportunities that we have. Like, if you see something that someone has, like, let's say, you know, someone wrote a book and you want to write a book, like, go for it, use the vision, right? I don't want to say use that person, because that's not what I'm trying to say. Use the example that person has set for you as a measurement of what's possible for you, and allow that to inspire you to take inspired action. And yeah, just start where you are, because at the end of the day, and I say this to myself all the time, is it's not a race. Like, there's no,
Yes.
there's no award I'm getting at the end of this other than happiness. And that's where I draw my line. Is I ask myself often, I say, is that going to get me closer to feeling good? And that's my measurement, is like, do I feel good doing this? Is having that thing, is it going to make me feel more fulfilled? Is it going to make me feel more inspired? Is it going to get me closer to being that person that at the beginning of stress, right? The first S, is it going to help me be that person?
Mm.
And if it does, I'm all for it. Let's do it. And if it's not, then that's going to take me away from my goal. And there's so many times where I've had to do that. I mean, you see a piece of cake, you're on a health kick, right? And you're like, right now, I'm not fasting, but I'm juicing right now. I'm on this juice cleanse.
Yeah.
And thank God the sugar cravings are gone. I had them for 2 days, and I'm like, okay, one more day, I should be good. And I was thinking about it today. I have a networking thing at night, and I was like, oh crap, I won't be able to drink, and I won't be able to have any of the appetizers. And I was like, if you'd asked me a week ago, I would have not went to this event today, because it would have been stressful. And I would have been like, no, I don't want to tempt myself. No, I'm just not going to go. But my priority this week is my health. And I said, you know what? I have no problem. Someone could put it right in front of me, and I have enough willpower to say no, thank you, because I know that I'm focused on the goal of being that future self, and eating, the cheesecake that's probably not that delicious anyway, is going to taste so much better when I'm done with this. I'll have a better cheesecake in 2 weeks,
Yes, you'll reward yourself with something even better.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Dark chocolate cheesecake. That'll be worth it.
Deadly. So how does following this stress acronym, this framework, actually help to reduce stress for people?
Great question. So it does a few things. Number one is, and the last one will probably make us both laugh, but the first one, it actually really helps us to I believe it empowers us to be more in control of the outcome, right? So by choosing and saying, you know what, I'm not going to let stress get to me as much, because the reality is it's still going to happen. I mean, I blew up yesterday on something. So it does happen, but it happens a lot less. Living in an empowered state, so living more from a proactive approach than a reactive approach.
Right.
And really owning that position of, I'm going to handle stress and not let stress manage me.
Right.
And then the second, which I find just fascinating, is it's fun. It makes the whole stress conversation less monster-like. And, you know, if we can really, like, I think of the word fear, right? And most people think of fear like it's a scary monster. So I have an amazing mentor who I've never met, but I follow her and she's awesome. Marie Forleo. I don't know if you ever heard of her.
Yes.
But
who
she,
doesn't know Marie?
right? She coined, or I don't know if she coined it, but there was a picture that she had and it was so cool. And it said, we know each other from a women's group, and it's amazing, Women's Prosperity Network. Big props to the sisters and to the community. And so in that community, I learned false evidence appearing real. And then Marie Forleo went to the next level, and I love it. It says, shoot, I'm forgetting it right now. It's face everything and rise.
Yes. I was wondering if that was it.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that one before.
Yeah, I just love that one, because it's like, isn't that life?
Yeah.
Like, things are going to come. And like, you know, 2 years ago, my dad had a brain tumor, and we had basically, you know, a week to decide if we wanted to give the doctor permission to do brain surgery and cut his head open or not. And it was like, like, how much information could I literally research in a week? That's not a lot of time.
No.
And I was working, and I had a full-time job, and I had all these things I had to do. And it was like, oh, by the way, your dad's having brain surgery, maybe. And if he does, here are the consequences. And if he doesn't, here are the consequences. And it was like, oh my God. And then my mom was diagnosed with cancer, like within that same, you know, couple week period. And so here I was like, well, thanks, you know, thanks for this bag of tricks. What do I do with this now? And I got to do this work. And that's really what kind of set me on this path of life is going to come whether we like it or not. And how do we navigate it in a way that's as stressless as possible? Because it is going to be stressful, and it doesn't have to be as overwhelming as maybe it used to be or it could be, right? And we don't know, right? The neighbors we talked about in the comparisitis, you know, maybe that's part of it, right? Is having these different aspirations of things that we want while maintaining our emotional intelligence and our emotional endurance, so that we can continue enjoying life and really being fulfilled and happy parents. Because I think at the end of the day, every parent wants to be the best they can, and they are not going to be that if they're stressed out all the time.
No.
It's impossible.
Yeah. So true. So true.
Yeah.
Now you have some gifts, or one gift. I can't remember. What did we say?
I do. I have 2 gifts. One of them is not 100% ready yet, but I'll be happy to share. This is actually the first place that I've shared it, so I'm very excited about that.
Woohoo,
yeah.
Premiere.
Yes, it is a premiere. So I'm very excited to share it with your community. So the first one is actually, for those that are interested, they can go to internalpeacenow.com. And there is some free gifts there. Specifically, there's access to, or actually internalpeacenow.com/gift. And that is the best way to access. It's a 90-second video that talks about how to reclaim your peace no matter what's going on, how to bring it back and achieve it in a minute and a half. And then the other one is brand new. This is the premiere, and it's reduceyourstress.com.
Okay.
And that is a quiz to see how stressed out you are and what you can do about reducing your stress.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely
So
amazing.
that's
And
cool.
I can see this applying to so many people from so many different walks of life. I mean, we're 18 months into a pandemic and it's like that we all thought was going to be done and over with in like a couple of months.
Hmm.
And we're still, not fully living the life that I don't want to say returning to normal, but fully living the life that we want to live collectively. And so I think that everyone can really stand to do a little assessment of, what's really going on in my life and what are some things that I can do to minimize the stress that I'm experiencing so that I can have more joy, right?
Totally.
Because, like you
That I
said,
believe that's why we're here.
yeah, and like you said, like when we're stressed out as parents, when we've got really high stress levels and we're not managing it well, it trickles down to our kids. It just does. There's no way around it. Like we
Yeah.
might think we're hiding it, but the kids know.
They're smarter than we realize
They are
sometimes.
so freaking smart. They pick up on so much.
Yeah. So true.
So yeah. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This is amazing. I will make sure that I add the links into the notes underneath the YouTube video, and this is going to go up on social media too. So I'll make sure I post all of that in
Cool.
there so that people can get access to that because I just think, these tools are so critical to us, living not just functional lives, but joyful lives, right? Really making the most out of the time that we have here on this earth.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
I'm honored to
awesome.
be here. Thanks for having me.